Thank you everybody for coming in. Also, late in the evening, we're sure you're enjoying the air conditioning. So this is Animals on Screen. We talk about the use of live animal actors in film, TV, video game development, as well as some of the newer technologies and audience reception to both of those, to animal actors and to the VFX that's coming up in all of the films, TV, video games. I'm going to do a quick introduction of our panel today. We have Mr. Nazal, Bobbi Brink, Haarsma, and Drew Lewis. And I just wanted, even after introducing everyone, just to emphasize how special this panel is. There are 3 Emmy Award-winning producers on this table. As you know, that's the highest honor you can get in television. So that's pretty great. And then Bobbi Brink. So just curious in the room, and I know we're going to filter in, but how many here are filmmakers or interested in getting into film? Anybody? Quite a few. Okay, good. And any specifically having worked with animals before? Because that's like a whole nother element. Okay, good. So this sounds for you. So this is an excellent discussion about being informed about what your options are, as well as the ethical and moral responsibility of filmmaking, because we are forming conversations. And, you know, that leads its way into society. So let me start with maybe Drew, PJ, can ask you a couple questions as producers about the foundation of animals in film, TV, video games. Why is it, do you think, that that's such a draw?
Well, it's a draw, but, you know, as a producer, one of the things that we see when something comes on our desk, you know, if it's got kids, water, or animals, we say no, because it's too much work, too expensive. But the thing with animals is that there's nobody in this room here that doesn't have a positive or negative thought with animals. You had a dog when you grew up, or you got bit by a dog, and you're afraid of dogs. But everyone has a visceral reaction to animals. When we want something, when we see something in film, it's very important that it's grounded in some element of reality for us. Ted was saying that today on his panel, that when you see an animal, people want it to be real. They don't want the CGI because they have that connection to an animal. I mean, why do you think Disney does it all the time? It makes those animals talk for their kids. But we were talking about this earlier today, right? That the audience is driving that want.
Yeah, well, I think it's twofold. I think there's a lot of directors that are right nowadays that are sort of pushing for that realistic vibe, that authentic. I want to give my actors real sets, you know, real environments, real animals, right? You know, so they can interact. I don't think, you know, like we've seen movies with, you know, CG animals and fake animals that are just as powerful, Jaws, as ones that have used real animals. And then I think the other side of the coin is like how the industry is sort of looking to subsidize the CGI, right? So it's this idea of, again, going back to practical effects and how they're using marketing to kind of like trigger us to go see movies more, right? Like you see the Mad Max movies and Top Gun movies being touted as like all practical effects, no CGI. And in fact, that's actually not true. Those 2 movies alone are in the top 20 for CGI shots in film. They have like over 2,000 plus CGI shots. So it's a little bit of like twofold, right? You're seeing audiences react to the marketing, and then the studios react to how they want to bring forth that realism. And I think there's like a given, there's a dichotomy there. There's a pool, and that's kind of why we're seeing people want to use live animals when in fact it's not really necessary.
So it's not because they have a dog when they were a kid.
And animals are such a part of our lives. It makes sense they would be a part of our cinematic conversation, right? When I was preparing for this panel, I was thinking about everything from Free Willy to Milo and Otis. Me growing up, those were all real animals. They had to be, right, in the 70s, 80s. But then that has led to just like animal child actors, just like with actresses, diversity, all of these parts of the entertainment industry. We are learning through mistakes that it hasn't always been so rosy. And maybe, Bobbi, you can tell us a little bit about that because you have quite a few retired or rescued animal actors on your sanctuary.
Right, we have quite a few that have come from the entertainment and the cub petting. And I think the biggest thing is the public and the producers alike, they don't know what happens to the animals before they get to the movie set and after. And most all of the movie animals are disposed of. The lucky ones end up at sanctuaries like mine. And as you're going to see in a video today, you'll see what happens to them before they get on the set. And a lot of times, the public has no idea. A lot of these animals disappear, just don't know. So that's why we're here today.
Right, we did get in touch with American Humane. They are the ones that give that accreditation, no animals were harmed in the making of this film. But they weren't able to be here today, but they did send over a one sheet, and one of the things I thought they were interesting is they compared, because they had original birth and child actors, they compared themselves to like welfare agents or children on set, keeping track if they feel an animal is just done for the day, doesn't want to work anymore, that if it's a dog, that it gets walked, those sorts of things. But to Bobbi's point, it might not just be on set, but what is their life before and after filming.
But there's also that idea that no animals were hurt on set is a little mischievous, because they use that on The Hobbit, but 27 animals died on the set of The Hobbit. 3 chickens were mauled by dogs, 7 horses wandered off and died somehow, a bunch of goats died, we don't know how. But they don't consider that because of the film. Yet they were brought to the film set and they died there. So where's the line? Like, is it nothing? Like
Right.
no animals, period? Or, where's the line?
Or define harmed.
Yeah, or define harm.
So the way I understand it is that a director gets certified, and with that certification, they're able to make any film use that certification and say no animals were filmed. So the checks and balances is still a little unclear, which is why Bobbi does the work that she does. And actually, we did have a clip of one of some of the animals that are at your sanctuary. I don't know if you know, but just 30, 40 minutes east of San Diego, Bobbi has Southern California's only true exotic animal sanctuary. Do you want to tell us just really quick about that?
Sure. Lions, tigers, and bears. We're right here in Alpine. We're on 146 acres. I've been working with the exotic animals since 1990. And I personally have moved over 1,000 rescued animals across this country, driven over 300,000 miles. And all because they're either abandoned, abused, compensated. Everyone thinks these animals live the happy life at the zoo, but they don't. They've actually originated as surplus animals out of the zoos, end up in the private sector, and then are used for things like entertainment or cup petting. And we actually will have a little activation just down the street tomorrow where you can all come and visit our booth, or you can actually come to Lions, Tigers, and Bears and visit.
I didn't know that was here. Very nice. Well, let's take a look at this one. I think this first one we're going to see is the tiger from Life of Pi, correct? Actual tiger, which a lot of you might not know, won the Academy Award that year, correct, Mark?
To not do it. And that's why I got on as hard as I did. Okay, you want one drinker? Okay, so I want to try to make the word you. So, you do it.
Oh my God.
Because I like to make the off. And the fingers on the rock, and when you hit them, it's like a vice.
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't do that. It does that. Stick to one. But here's the problem. If you run a video the whole time of year, and you did a 45-second montage of the concept of this animal, she would bring what you learned.
So this is hidden footage. Did I understand that correctly, Bobbi, that he said the tiger would rather be whipped than perform?
Exactly, and if you've seen The Life of Pi, this is when what they're doing is they're teaching him to station on those stands. So when he's sitting on the front of the boat, that's how they taught him to stay on the front of the boat and not get off the front of the boat. We call it stationing.
So again, if this had happened to a human actor, to a child actor.
Could you imagine?
Right, but an animal can't speak for itself. So this is a lot of the concern for people like Bobbi and the work that she does. Now, Mark, you've had a lot of conversations about this for producers, studios, directors. It comes down to us, the audience, and our reaction. So can you speak a little bit to that about the realism of the animals?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting to actually see that video again. Granted, Life of Pi won the Academy Award for visual effects with that tiger. The question became, why did they make those choices to actually have a real tiger on set? I know for a fact that they didn't want the actor to be interacting with the tiger because of potential hazards. Therefore, the CG tiger was created, but there were still some moments where that happened, and so the question was why? Some of that could be audience perception at the time, like obviously this was a while back, and also the perception of CG and perhaps how people would react to knowing everything was CG and there wasn't anything real in it. I think audiences, I mean, I'm sure you know at this point that audiences have a certain power in terms of being able to inform what filmmakers will respond to or will want to have within their projects. So when you have people like Christopher Nolan say, we have zero CG in this, I think people need to have a better understanding of what that means, because even that is very much misconstrued.
And PJ, we were having a conversation earlier about how the producers are going to look to what the audience wants and their reaction. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Well, it comes down to money, right? You all want their picture to be successful. So if it's practical and they feel that it needs to be a real animal, they'll fight for that, disregarding the issues that we talk about and kind of sweep that under the table for money.
Right, it's show business, right? So let's lead into another video I know that Bobbi had, was one of the bears. It is a little difficult to watch, but we promise there's a silver lining here because we're looking at solutions for animals on screen. But Bobbi, what is happening?
You did the wrong thing.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Can you tell us a little bit about this clip we're about to see?
Right, so Rocky is a bear that we took in, I'd say, about 4 years ago. And this is a perfect example of he's working at home and being trained to be used on a movie.
Okay, go ahead.
He did the one thing Randy feared most.
That's great.
Okay! Randy!
Is he bleeding? Yes, he is. He's bleeding.
Okay.
Is he doing okay? No. Okay. He's really still. Okay. He's not breathing anymore. He's not breathing anymore? No. I want you to take a deep breath and cover his mouth with your mouth, making a tight seal.
I was applying CPR. At this point, I had pepper spray from Stevie's mouth and face all over mine, and I couldn't see.
Come on, Stevie. Hold on. I want you to count out loud. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
And I just remember this feeling like he had just left it.
So this is a situation where the bear was being trained to attack for filming or for entertainment, and they actually did attack. So what normally happens to an animal after?
A lot of times a bear like this will just be put down, but this trainer actually cared about the bear and fought for the bear's rights. The bear is now at our place, and he's going to live out his life at Lions Tigers.
Again, if you go to Lions, Tigers, and Bears, just east of San Diego, I've seen this bear, and he's very cool.
You would never know.
So then this now, and I apologize, I realize this is jarring, but the reality is this is part of that show business element. To get the story, the component story that makes money, this is a lot of times the process. And there's not to say, American Made didn't want me to share people and audiences are determining how films are being made by our reactions. So Mark, when it gets down to the pre-production of a project, you're saying, and to PJ's point, the audience can tell when it's not a real animal, but is there a way around that, or is that just how it is?
I think there's a couple of things to consider when you want to bring a CG animal to the screen, right? Apart from the technical, I'd say we are at a time and a place today where the technical abilities of our software is now able to render CG animals pretty realistically. However, we're not at a place where a producer can make it a last-minute call and say, hey, can you get this tomorrow? Which, by the way, happens a lot of times. There's a lot of consideration that needs to be brought in from budget, like certain projects, especially on television, tend to be lesser than film. What types of characterizations do these animals need? But I think more so, maybe Michelle, what I want to show is what does it take to bring animals on screen? And it actually takes a team. It's not a one-person job, right? So I think what I want to show is I have a video that from my team where they actually will walk you through what it takes to bring an animal to screen and how intricate the process is, not to dissuade people from taking that approach, but rather to educate and say, you can't just make this decision last minute. It is possible, it is doable. You can make more interesting choices actually when you plan for it, because the planning is a part of the narrative of the project, and you can even give certain characterizations to these creatures. Let's roll the video.
Hi there, my name is Charlie Sena.
And I am Lily Revai. And we are the CEOs at IONR Studios.
On behalf of the team, we hope you are having a wonderful Comic-Con.
And now to our show reel.
Hi, I'm Balázs Drenkovic and I am the visual effects supervisor here at IONR Studios.
And my name is Csaba Bárdos and I'm the animation director.
From crawling spiders to wolves in forests.
And even flying dragons in the sky.
It takes a lot of planning and technical know how to make sure things look good on screen.
And move well too. From a story perspective, the most important things are the personality, background and motivation of the character.
These three determine each behavior, reaction, emotion and movement of the CG animal in every situation, in every shot.
What Renko is trying to say is that before we can even get to creating good CG, we need to know the story first.
Today, we now have the tools to create whatever we want in CG, given the right time, budget, and context.
After the detailed discussion with the production, the director, producer, and client-side VFX supervisor, we begin with determining what the character is all about, what its movements are, the expressions needed, and how it's composed in various shots.
This is followed by collecting concepts and references for the look and the movement of the animal. The more, the better here. Then we share it with our team of CG specialists for different tasks from modeling, texturing, look development, and for certain creatures, grooming to create the natural, realistic or stylized assets of the animal on the screen. In our case, with the spider in the film Black Spider, it had to look and feel natural, but with a sense of character that was not necessarily disgusting.
As you may have guessed, the next thing I will talk about that is important and something that my department manages is the animation or movement of the character. After we create the rig or bones of the animal with controls for animation, we look at other things, whether or not we have to add additional elements that define the look of the movement, like underlying muscle simulations. The key to this is to actually closely study the movement of the reference animal to make sure it moves like it would in real life. We use as much video reference as possible and even film references in real life to ensure the highest level of quality.
Lastly, we work closely with the on-set visual effects supervisor to make sure that we capture on-set data from the set lighting to the camera lenses, use the other information that makes sure we are able to photographically replicate how the CG elements would look in the scene for realism.
Yeah, overall, our job is to make the illusion of real life, and if we do our job well, the audience won't even notice what we did, unless it's intentional, stylized, or very fantastical.
As you can see, it takes a proper planning with various creatives and a great team to make sure that we are able to create the best work possible.
We hope you enjoyed our presentation on animals on screen. And now, back to the panel.
Thank you. So I think, as you guys can see, there's so much possibility. I think you need to open up people to the possibilities as opposed to the limitations. I think what tends to happen is when something doesn't look good on screen, audiences are quick to blame the visual effects. But as you see, if visual effects or the people doing the visual effects is given the right context, the right decisions, and by the way, they don't make the decisions come from the top. The decisions come from the directors and the producers. If those decisions weren't sound to begin with, every choice is a consequence. So if something doesn't look good, people need to understand that it's not necessarily the CG that is bad. Maybe it's the decisions that led to it were. Right. Well, it looked pretty realistic to me. I was getting a little creepy crawly with the spiders. So, PJ, Drew, Mark, really all our producers, there is a difference between theatrical budgets and TV budgets, right?
Correct.
So when would, for our filmmakers in the room, I don't know if you have in mind specifically feature films versus TV shows, but how early would that get worked in?
Well, I can tell you when it doesn't get worked in and what it costs you when thinking about the Toshiba commercial. So a lot of people are trying to do different things. Disney made the announcement that they won't use animals except for their, where they film it for their animal shows. And then, I don't know if most of you guys know, but most of the big agencies in the world are owned by 3 companies, WPP, Omnicom, and Publicist. So WPP made a decision with PETA to not use animals in any of their commercials. They signed a deal, but giant conglomerate that they were forgot to tell everybody that they owned. And when we were working at Y&R Wonderman, we did a commercial for Toshiba with a monkey and a dog. You want to go on about what happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was a fun concept, right? I mean, creatively, it's fun to see animals in commercials or TV, right? Like there's that emotional connection, like we talked about, and especially if you're trying to sell a product, right? Why not tie those 2 things together? So, we produced a spot. I don't know if you guys want to roll it for Toshiba and we'll tell you the aftermath after.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, because I think this is the 2nd time the commercial's ever been seen.
yeah. Unseen commercial from.
There are some things in life you can always count on, like intuitive, reliable laptops from Toshiba, the laptop expert.
It's cute. Obviously, I don't know how many laptops I can sell, but because of the hammer came down, right? PETA found out and said like, oh, you're a WPP agency. Was a shoe supply van? Everybody was like, yes. And it was a very expensive shoot, right? Handlers.
Well over $1 million.
Yeah, handlers for both the dog and the monkey. They actually had to be pre-trained because there's a moment where one of the monkeys
has to ride the dog.
Has to ride the dog. So a huge, and it was like a 3-day shoot because of so many takes with the animal. It was a nightmare, right? Like a nightmare. So, which ballooned the budget, and they ended up having to go back and CG the animals anyway because Pete, wouldn't let them
So that you redo the commercial and spend the same amount of money making it again in CG.
So, to answer your question, Michelle, is the decision has to be made on the onset of it. Because here's the thing, I look at that and I immediately think, okay, that could have totally been done in CG with, and you know, when I first assumed that it wasn't, because we are at that place where we do have the ability to do it. And also, I would argue that in having it as a CG element, you do have the ability to curate a much more nuanced performance because you have the ability to control every facet of it.
Right, so Bobbi, each of your animals have different personalities. I'm sure you get to know their personalities differently. So for the ones that were working in entertainment, if they said, I want this very happy tiger to act mean and scary, that's actually counterintuitive to the animal's personality, right? And
right, every single animal has their own personality, just like your dog and cat. Difference is you can take your dog and cat home, they can sleep in your bed, they're in your house. Tiger's in a small cage. Rocky, perfect example, never been in over bigger than a 350 square foot cement floor cage until he came to our place. So really, really sad how the lions, tigers, and bears live, and they're on concrete, they get arthritis, they don't perform forever. They're not like your dog and cat where you're going to teach them to sit and they're going to sit their whole life for you. They'll perform about 6 or 7 years and they're done, where a bear will live 30 years. So big difference between the domestic and the exotic. And they're so much more expensive to care for. And when they're done performing and they can't make money with them, they're down the road.
You told me a statistic before about Rocky, how much he costs just annually to care for.
Right, he cost about $25,000 in food, and I would say we have spent easily $750,000 on his habitat.
So far, someone that acquires an exotic animal, plans to train it and use it for film, might not be prepared for that cost, right?
Well, they don't spend that because they're going to house them in the minimal standard. So in California, that's 350 square foot for one bear. In some other states, it's the size of a parking lot. USDA federal is that the animal can stand up, turn around, fresh food and water. That's all they have to have. It's really sad.
So I learned from Bobbi only recently that there are more tigers in backyards than there are in the wild. And that's pretty shocking when you think that that's because of human decisions. They didn't, that was not the plan. So Mark, to your other conversation about production, who would be the person that would say, contact Bobbi and say, can we observe one of your animals to maybe watch their movements? Who makes that decision, and how would an audience viewer?
Well, first and foremost, I think the overall producer of the project, not the visual effects, the overall producer of the project should make the decision early on that it has to be CG, and then that is the call of the visual effects supervisor to observe as much as they can. I mean, I think we're also at a good place where there is the internet and there's a lot of free sources available, but if there's certain nuances that they may want to try to observe, then that would be production themselves.
Okay, so Drew PJ, should viewers be against any animal actors? What's a balance here?
Well, it's more of a question for Bobbi. Like, where's the line? What is the line? Like, none at all? Nowhere near it? I don't think you need them at all, period.
I feel as far as the exotic animals, none. And then domestic, really carefully.
Right.
What about Drew?
Yeah, I get it. Put me in a bear outfit.
A little more hair, buddy. You could do the bear.
I'm ready. I'm born for this.
It's a whole new thing, yes.
On a much lighter
note. This is where we
note.
stop and go, though. Go to lionstigersandbears.org and donate. Or you're going to see Drew in a little suit.
But that's a great question, because we as the consumers, when Mark was saying by our conversations, our social posts, the way we respond to commercials, films, video games, it's going to affect how producers, studios moving forward make future productions. Will they go visual effects route? Will they continue to use animal actors? Will they say only dogs and cats? That's to a great extent dependent on the audience reaction. So whereas a lot of us might feel powerless, in reality it's the opposite. We hold the power as viewers. So, okay, Bobbi, so I have a question for you, just because I know your fantastic history with the Big Cat Safety Act. Can you just tell us a little bit about your work there?
So it took 18 years of hard work to get a federal bill passed. It's called the Big Cat Public Safety Act. I originally started working on it with Tippi Hendren, and we just went and walked the halls and started, and it was actually a bill really to stop the unnecessary breeding outside of the SSP plan, which is the species survival plan that our AZA zoos hold. But then it just slowly progressed, and it kept failing and failing and failing. The circuses stopped it first. Kenneth Bell from the circuses stopped it first, and then we finally got him on board, and then we slowly got the AZA zoos, and it finally went through last year. So it now makes private ownership of big cats illegal, which will help a lot of the unnecessary breeding now.
That's great.
Finally.
Mark, is there a ratio for an indie project versus a blockbuster? So I'm just thinking filmmakers here at Comic-Con, there's a good amount of them that want to have in mind these great fantasy storylines.
I think it's not necessarily a ratio, but it's an awareness of budget. Their budgets can be found in many different ways. Like there are rebates, there's incentives. Find ways to responsibly budget your film so you're not waiting at the last minute. Like it really comes down to planning. Everything comes down to planning. If a film is doing something last minute, then you really didn't do a proper job of planning out what your film needs.
That's cheaper though now, right? It's cheaper than live animals.
It's now, after you mentioned how much it cost you to film with a live monkey, the answer is most definitely yes.
Well, I read it somewhere between $13 a second up to $1,500 a minute, depending on planning.
I think it's the way that visual effects is bid is very different than commercials are bid. It's more of complexity, type of animal. It all comes down to the shot, because what if an animal is really only seen for a fraction of a second and you're only seeing a face versus a full-on animation. So it really depends on the shot. And once again, it comes down to a responsible discourse between different specialists in the film industry.
Right. Well, I feel very educated just by this conversation. Just show of hands, has anybody ever cried in an animal movie? Every time. Like every time, yeah, just thinking about it. So it's still very impactful, and again, that translates to profit. So we can see that moving forward, we can expect more animal storylines. It's just, as consumers, we can affect that industry into whatever direction that we feel is more ethical and more responsible. We do have a promo for Bobbi, but has anyone here been to Lions, Tigers, and Bears? Okay, a couple fans here, right. So you know what I'm talking about. It really is amazing. Some of these exact animals that you've seen today, you can actually feed them, no contact, feed them, they're living their best life. Really great thing. Drew, PJ, Bobbi, Mark, just any particular call to action in your industry or in your field that you would love to pass on to our audience?
Donate, help us. LionsTigersandBears.org.
I agree.
$10 works.
I think legislation really is the best way forward, because if people aren't allowed to do certain things, then they'll look for the right alternative to do and to tell their story.
Yeah, but if legislation takes time, and until then, I think education is key. And I think that's a big part of why we wanted to do this panel with Bobbi. We got educated, and now we want to educate everybody else on that. Listen, practical and like real animals just. It's not smart, right? Like, stop. It's, your audience, if it's done well, the audience won't know the difference, right? And so whether you're making a small indie film or a big budget, there's ways to figure it out. There's ways to shoot it creatively.
And you know Mark now, so he'll help you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the greatest movies with animals out there are CGI. I mean, if you look at like Planet of the Apes, those movies are incredible. Those are all CG, right? Jaws. That's not a real shark, folks. So, don't spoil it.
I go swimming there.
So I think it's an education problem too. And I'm glad we're here. I'm glad you guys are here to help.
So what I'm getting is enjoy your entertainment with visual effects. Visit Lions, Tigers, and Bears for the real thing. That would be my takeaway from all this. Just curious if you have a few more minutes. Anyone in the audience just have a question for the panel in general? Because I saw some filmmakers. Go ahead, just shout it out.
So I have a question about specifically like regarding private. That was very interesting to me because my girlfriend is actually a safety officer with biology lab, and the amount of potential PPE just to get into the lab with primates is like huge. And also, one of the things people don't realize about working with monkeys there are so many like big risks of transmissible disease between us. I think human herpes, for example, can be fatal to monkeys. So I'm wondering, like, I have lots of questions regarding that. The other thing that I kind of just to point out about CG is that people still believe that this idea of like chimps tend to have light faces because of movies. The truth is that the only chimps you see in movies are light faced because adults are darker faced and adults are way too dangerous to work with, so you only ever see light faced chimps. But what I was asking about, like working with monkeys specifically, like was that part of the cost and part of the lack of that's pro CGI. If you have CGI, you don't have to worry about all those like constraints about working with monkeys specifically, and like how was that brought up in set, like disease transmission and whatnot when you did work with that monkey, and like I mean that's just kind of pro for CG, I'm saying, but like I'm kind of curious, like did you see that when you were working with the monkey?
I think we're getting two questions about the safety of the animal on working on set, and then also getting facial performance out of an animal actor versus visual effects.
But correct me if I'm wrong, they did eventually end up using visual effects for this.
They redid the commercial.
They redid it. But this was the original cut.
That was the original.
That
actually is the original that you saw.
And there was a lot of safety issues on that set.
Yes.
But it's never enough.
Yeah, I don't, gosh, I'm trying to remember. Like, it's funny, they sort of, if you've ever been on a commercial shoot, they sort of, we're over here in like Video Village, and then
with our lattes,
and our phones, taking care of the client, and and then like all the the gaffers and everyone, they're all like wrangling and getting everything ready for shots. And so I remember there being safety handlers. I remember it being like, don't go near the monkey, don't pet the monkey. Don't, stay away from the dog and the monkey, right? Because, we don't want to rattle them. We want to get the shot. And we don't want to be here until midnight. So it was definitely a concern, and it made things on set very not fun, right? Like it changed the atmosphere. And again, like I said, I show that commercial we show that commercial as what not to do, right? CG would have been the better option. And it ended up being the option anyway. They had to pay it twice.
Bobbi, at your sanctuary, it's no contact. So even when guests come, and I've done it, you can actually feed the animals. That transmission between animals and humans, and the health and safety of both the humans and the animals, I've never even thought to ask about that. How real is that when there's roadside petting zoos and these sorts of things?
It's very real, and with primates, they're just like humans, so a lot of things are transferable. But even with your dogs and cats, and even with the cats and the bears, and especially parasites, zoonotic diseases are contagious to humans and can be carried to humans. So a lot of times in the AZA zoos now, they are completely full contact masks and gloves with primates now. And it didn't used to be that way. In the private sector, it is not. So AIDS, there's many, many things you can get from monkeys biting you. And monkeys bite all the time. It's just natural behavior. All the more reason they don't belong on a movie set. They don't belong in a cage, and they don't belong in a house. Chimps will go right for a woman's face. They will tear a woman's face off, and they will go directly to men's testicles. And that's just instinct, and that's how they're going to attack you. They're the most dangerous animal in captivity.
I think that's reason enough, right? So you, Bobbi, you brought up something that made me think. So we, as consumers, are part of this culture. When I go on a cruise ship and I get off and there's cub petting or there's these sorts of things, that's part of this using live animals for entertainment, whether it's in film or in person.
I know exactly. Mark and I have gone on many cruises for the reason to go in the theater and to educate people. Please, please, please don't get off the cruise ship and go pet the baby tiger, because they are going to kill those animals later. They're disposable. A tiger will breed back every 105 days. They pull the babies from the mama when the baby's 8 to 10 days old before the eyes are open. That brings the female immediately back into heat. They breed her back. They'll use the babies for up to 2 months till they're too old for people to touch and hold. And usually they sell them off to someone, or they kill them, or they disappear. The new babies come back in. They will lie to you and tell you they're a sanctuary, it's conservation. There is no legitimate place in this country anymore you can get your picture taken with a baby animal, exotic animal, so please don't do it.
So this is coming back to Mark's earlier conversation that we as the consumers, we're affecting that change by the decisions that we make to participate in it or to be more supportive of visual effects, not be so critical, not post about it, complain about it. How many people after just hearing this little conversation would prefer a film have a visual effects animal over a live action?
Same with swim with the dolphin. Please don't swim with the dolphins. Please.
I see it so differently. There was a filmmaker over here that had a question. Yes, sir, back.
I have a question regarding visual effects. Are there new techniques being considered to capture real animal performance, like using large language models to train on real animal behavior and visual recognition and AI to be able to, sonar and different radio frequencies that you can use, LiDAR, of course, all that stuff, motion capture too. And passive motion capture you can even use with particulate matter too. That would be non-invasive.
Well,
to capture the animal performances, and then that way you can study even their internal anatomy in real time.
So use a real animal to capture movements for visual effects?
And being able to look at their musculature and skeletal structure as they're moving. It is possible to do that. It's just maybe you haven't applied it to film.
Well, here's a question for you. Film is about specificity. Story is about specificity. So if your argument is you just want to see it move in real time, what is the actual purpose? But the answer is there are technologies that are being developed that would allow you to capture a performance more nuanced so you can apply it into other things. I think actually we just had a conversation with a couple of different visual effects professionals who would believe the future of the visual effects industry with AI is that it's going to be a part of the tool set to be able to do things quicker, less manual, but it doesn't mean that a film needs less specificity. If anything, a film always has specificity because otherwise you're just really wanting to play into a sandbox. Right? Make sure as a filmmaker, consciously be aware of what story you're trying to tell, and that should inform what animal movements, motions, and character shots contain.
Yes, that's the whole point. You better understand them. Somebody can see, an animator can see the musculature in real time on the animal as it's moving. In real time on that's the whole point.
I mean, in theory, when you play a video game, like a lot of those, I feel like in the world today, we have so much data of a lot of different things that have been done over time. You could argue, hey, let's take a look at the CG model from Life of Pi, or those are already built. Like if you go on TurboSquid right now, a lot of assets, they call it, are already available for you to try, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's available for every single person without the technical ability to use it. So maybe perhaps your question is, can it be available for the public with the right programming and the right tools and the right need? Then yes, I believe it could be.
Yes.
So this might be a little bit of a sidebar conversation, like it's getting more technical, but I appreciate that. I think there's a lot of good synergy here. We're starting to realize this is more prevalent. So did you have your hand? Go ahead. Take one more question.
Of course, I tried to bring it on if we can.
So I just wondered if you had any comments about making of that movie. You made a comment earlier about the need to investigate animals. I just wanted to get a comment on
Which movie?
Arthur the King.
Arthur the King?
Arthur.
Arthur.
I don't think I saw that.
I'm not.
I'll have to look it up now.
It's about a group of adventurers that do repetitive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Arthur the King. Everybody looking at that film. Okay.
I've seen the trailer and I haven't seen the movie, but I'm familiar with it.
And I just want to remind everyone, these are the only actors that cannot speak for themselves, to Bobbi's point, right? Even a child can grow up and say, hey, this was my experience as a child actor on set, but these animals 10, 15, 20 years can say, this is this handler's practice, and this is what happens in their care. So we appreciate you guys coming. We hope this has been informative to help you make other decisions moving forward in your own filmmaking and in your own entertainment selections. And then we have a final trailer from Bobbi Brink to encourage you to come visit Lions, Tigers, and Bears. Thanks for that.
If you drive just 40 minutes east, away from the hustle and bustle of downtown San Diego, where the rolling hills meet the mountains, you'll come upon a magical place. A place where lions nap in the tall grass, where tigers romp and bears forage. San Diego's Lions, Tigers, and Bears. There's no place else like it. We're a globally accredited sanctuary, and for 20 years, we have been a haven for abused and abandoned exotic animals. More than 65 animals and 19 species reside at our sanctuary. Those animals fortunate enough to call lions, tigers, and bears their forever home come from all over, and each has a unique story. Together, we can make a real difference. Thank you for all you do for lions, tigers, and bears, and for the animals that we serve. Please donate today and help us to end the abuse. Can we look to you to help me?
Guys, this is just 30 minutes from here. You can go here tomorrow or on Monday and absolutely check them out online, donate. Bobbi's doing amazing work. We want to thank you, Bobbi, for your work.